In the past 48 hours, an amazing online social media experiment has emerged in what must be one of the most successful viral campaigns ever launched in the history of the internet. It's all aimed at making this man famous. His name is Joseph Kony. 48 hours ago, no one really knew his name, despite him being the International Criminal Court's most wanted man. He's thought to have kidnapped tens of thousands of mostly Ugandan children, forcing them to become soldiers and sex slaves. The campaign is aimed at making him so notorious that the world has no option but to bring him to justice. Well, joining me now from Sydney is the Chief Executive of UNICEF Australia, Dr. Norman Gillespie. Thanks for your time today, Dr. Gillespie.
It's a pleasure.
First of all, tell us, who is Joseph Kony?
Look, Joseph Kony is one of the world's really most brutal warlords. He's been around for some considerable time, and as your introduction said, his methods are to actually recruit children as his foot soldiers. And he's been ravaging through the Central Africa region for nearly 30 years. So in 2005, the International Criminal Court then decided it's time we moved on this guy, and they put out an arrest warrant for crimes against humanity. And UNICEF very much supported that at that time.
Now, the campaign to make him famous, the organiser had been hoping to get about 500,000 hits on YouTube. In 48 hours, he's got 11 million and counting pretty fast. It's a remarkable campaign, but how realistic is it that this online campaign could actually bring a warlord in Africa to justice?
Well, look, we have to acknowledge that whatever the rights and wrongs of all of this, it is an amazing piece of social mobilisation, and it should wake us all up to this fact. And I think it expresses that people, and especially young people, get really frustrated. They see these atrocities around the world, but feel they're powerless to do anything. So at last they've got a voice. Now, I think its main benefit is just bringing awareness to this situation, and bringing awareness not only to the atrocities, but to the fact that we can advocate, we can get governments to move on issues that really move us. Whether or not this ends in the arrestment of Joseph Kony or not, let's see if that happens. He's eluded the authorities for so long. But I think it really is now incumbent upon us to really take this feeling and say, well, let us tell you a bit more about these children. This is not an isolated incident. That if it's not the LRA, these children may well appear in some other army. The atrocities being perpetrated on children in many countries is really quite appalling.
Yeah, would you welcome international forces being deployed to Africa to try to hunt him down?
UNICEF is very careful to stay above all conflict. Conflicts always end up in children being the victims, and we really would like to see that avoided. Certainly it'd be very symbolic to bring this man in, but really I think it's about, well, okay, that's not the end of the issue. That won't solve the problem. You've got to go back to a country like Uganda and say, this is about systemic poverty. This is about the cycle of poverty that is a hopeless situation for many children that make them vulnerable to exploitation in this way. So really, I'd really like to see this now followed up with, well, what now can we do? Let's say we arrest Joseph. What then do we do with these children? And that's where UNICEF comes in on the ground with the rehabilitation, psychological counselling, family searches. In many cases, the families have been killed, and really trying to put something in place that means these children are better protected in the future.
Yeah, it's such a complex continent, isn't it? And so many missions in the past have not turned out well for the West and particularly for Africa. How would you rate Joseph Kony and the importance or the attempts to bring him to justice in the greater scheme of Africa's very complex problems?
The man hasn't got all of power today. He's reduced to, I understand, a few hundred followers, but there's no doubt that he has been responsible for tens of thousands. So I think it is very important morally to bring this man to justice, to actually say we are not going to tolerate this. I think you have to ask questions why this took so long, why someone like that has been able to operate, especially on such vulnerable children. But really it doesn't end with him. It now says, well, given this force of opinion, how can we use that for the good in getting policies and drive policies and indeed foreign aid and make sure it's used effectively to make sure this man isn't recreated in some other form. And he is not the only one. So in the terms of the issues that face Africa, he may be, in fact, a small figure, but he's a very big figure in terms of galvanizing this focus.
Dr. Norman Gillespie, thank you very much for your time on Lunchtime Agenda.
Thank you.
And if you want to learn more about Kony 2012, just Google those words and have a look at the video. Just watch the first couple of minutes and see if you can resist watching the rest of the 30 minutes. It's quite a remarkable piece, I must say.